What do you say, Khaki? Should we go ahead and start?
Let's roll.
Let's roll. Do we have a whole bunch of participants? We have a whole bunch of panelists. All right, let's rock and roll, folks. I was gonna say we should have a for those who are on hold watching the video montage. We should have a little poll at the end to see who first of all, who has that music caught in their heads forever now, and which one of those video montage elements was everyone's favorite. But spoiler alert, it was the puppy, and the baby seal came in second. So welcome everyone, and happy Earth Day. Welcome to the first Abington Township climate change action plan meeting. My name is John Spiegelman. I am the Commissioner of Ward 11 of Abington Township and the President of the Board of Commissioners. It's a great honor to welcome you all here because first and foremost, everything that happens from this point forward could not happen without all of you. So thank you so much for being a part of tonight. In somewhat atypical fashion, I'm not going to drone on forever because I know there's a lot to get to tonight. I want to say, of course, it is Earth Day again. Happy Earth Day to one and all. And even though Earth Day and the modern environmental movement are well over half a century old, a lot of people think of Earth Day and environmental consciousness, and they still automatically think of one or two sort of tired old tropes. Either sort of hippies in a drum circle praising Earth Goddess Gaia, or some sort of an elite environmentalism that's out of reach for so many people. The world of $25 lattes and $75 light bulbs. And the township's approach to environmental consciousness is could not be farther from either of those tired old stereotypes. It's all about environmental sustainability, of course, but it's in a way that is also economically sustainable, equitable, comprehensive, and perhaps above all, forward-looking in terms of opportunity and inclusivity, and all forms of true comprehensive sustainability. I'm going to just quickly go very briefly through the agenda tonight, which is actually, yep, there we go. Thank you, Ashley. What we're going to talk about tonight is why the township is developing a climate action plan. And of course, that's going to touch on what is climate change and what are its current and future impacts on our community and our broader world. What is a climate action plan? This is sort of a pretty important component. How to stay engaged. There's going to be community input and discussion, and then we're going to talk about next steps. With regard to community input and discussion, I want to tell everybody that at the end of the session, there's going to be public comment, and you're going to see a lot of materials tonight. I know there are a whole bunch of PowerPoint slides. Those and all other materials for tonight are going to be made available on the township website. So don't feel like you have to write everything down from the PowerPoints. And finally, thank you, Ashley, for putting up our sponsors page. There are a lot of folks to thank tonight. I'm not going to try to hit everybody because there's no way I possibly can. But please do take a look at our list of sponsors here on this page. I can promise you they're going to be, next time you see this, there are going to be even more logos on here because this is a growing list. We are truly grateful to all of these partners and all the partners to come. If you don't see your organization's logo here, or maybe your friend's organization's logo, that can absolutely change. You can definitely expand. We can expand the list of partners. So please do spread the word. And just personally, I would very much like to thank a number of people. Our incredible Environmental Advisory Council, especially the unstoppable and just limitless Khaki Evans, for just years and years of work leading up to this, and all the work preparing for tonight and to come. The amazing Ashley McIlvain, special assistant to the township manager, who has worked incredibly hard on all this, and she has one of the toughest workloads in the township in general. So she really is. She is a superhero. And again, once again, all of you, none of this could be happening without all of you. So now I'm going to kick things over to my good friend and our township manager, Rich Manfredi. Whom I hope is here.
Thank you, President Spiegelman. And as always, a difficult act to follow. Let me begin by saying, I can't say enough about the EAC, Jen Sherwood, and of course, Kaki, and the entire Environmental Advisory Council, who is not only involved in the Climate Action Plan, but very engaged in so many things that we do in operations on a daily basis, and becoming more and more engaged with land use and everything else. So that it's important to note that this is not one program that they're committed to. There are so many more. Now I'll go back on the script and by saying thank you to everyone and good evening to everyone. I am Richard Manfredi. I'm Abington's Township Manager. And I want to begin my brief remarks by thanking you for attending this evening. Thank you to all Abington Township residents, business owners, institutions, organizations, and of course, the employee team members. It is all of your continued commitment to the Abington community that makes this such a great place to be, especially given the challenging year we have faced and continue to confront. And if you don't mind, I'd again like to take a quick moment to go off script and just for a brief moment of pause for everyone who has not made it through these last 14 months, and for those who've lost loved ones or had sickness touch their life. Just want to take 5 seconds for a moment of silence. Thank you. All the people that are on here this evening who work so hard, who are committed to Abington, who are committed to real change and climate change. It's important to note that this is not something that happened overnight. As President Spiegelman stated, preparing and responding to climate change is not something any one of us can do alone. We sincerely appreciate your help in developing Abington's Climate Action Plan. It is through your participation and input tonight, and hopefully your continued engagement moving forward, that this plan will be successful. I'd also like to thank, above all else, the Board of Commissioners, who at every turn over the last 20 years, when Ed Michelot, the Public Works Director, had a vision for saving money, whether it's streetlights or recycling or other things, supported those, who took their own initiatives and moved those initiatives forward for not only energy consumption, reducing energy consumption, but in every aspect of the operations. The Board of Commissioners for many years and in recent years has doubled down their effort with respect to not only climate change, but energy management. I'd also like to thank the dedicated people at the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, who are led by a fantastic secretary in Patrick McDonald, the ICLEI USA and Drexel University's Sustainable Water Resource and Engineering Laboratory for providing resources, training, and a student intern that you will get to see later on this evening, Akila Chapman, who you'll not only hear from, but please understand what an important, great team member and key person she has been in developing our climate action plan. The township's commitment to sustainability has been established for many years, as I just mentioned, and I would be remiss if I did not specifically mention, I said it quickly, but it's important to note and acknowledge the vision and commitment of the longtime Director of Public Works, Ed Michelot, the incredible volunteers on the Environmental Advisory Council, the Shade Tree Commission, and many, many township employee team members who have and continue to work countless hours to ensure we are a leader in sustainability. Abington is the highest certified star community in the tri-state area, the second lead for cities community in Pennsylvania, a key reporter in its climate mitigation and adaptation efforts to CDP cities, and has been nominated by Money Magazine 3 times as a best place to live. We are driven to be an environmental leader and have undertaken initiatives such as the development of an energy transition plan, a lead for cities recertification, and why we are here tonight, the development of a local climate action plan. Again, for more than 20 years, the township has been working on an energy management plan and has been working on energy management in general. and we are ever mindful in our daily operations to look for new ways to be more energy and cost efficient. Very simply, I want to thank you for attending and participating in this great effort. It could not be done without you, and we will not be successful without you. And having said that, talking about the past and looking at the future, it's my privilege to introduce our next speaker, former Public Works Director and current Parks and Recreation Director, Angelo Pontelandolfo. Angelo.
Thank you, Manager Manfredi. Hello, I'm Angelo Pontelandolfo, Director of Parks and Recreation and former Public Works Director. As Mr. Manfredi mentioned, under the leadership of Ed Michelo, which I had the honor of working most of my career here with Ed, and the Public Works Department, spearheaded several initiative and longstanding sustainability initiatives that changed the operations of the department for the better, both in a reduction of community-wide greenhouse gas emissions and in a reduction of operational costs. One of the most well-known initiatives is our trash and recycle program. In 2008, the Township instituted a pay-as-you-throw program, a variable rate automatic collection system where residents pay for the size of their refuse container and received automated carts for paper and commingled recyclables. This hybrid system rewards the residents for their waste reduction by passing along the township savings to residents by reduced refuse fees. In 2013, the township implemented a 5-day waste collection program, allowing for single day, 1 per week collection of all trash, paper, commingle, and yard waste. This new waste collection process works by having different trucks collect 4 types of materials so they are not picked up at the same time, but on the same day. With the new program, the township used 7 less trucks, 13 less employees. The program also benefited residents by only having to place their carts and yard waste at the curb 1 day a week. Carbon emissions from trash trucks and missed collections were significantly reduced. The collection routes were better balanced, resulting in more efficient service and cost savings and overall stabilization of solid waste fees. From an operational standpoint, these programs have been effective in cost reduction, efficiency, but they have also made the township a leader in recycling of commingled paper items as well as yard debris. Township residents have consistently recycled over 14,000 tons of recyclables each year, with over 15,000 tons collected in 2020. In fact, the township was one of the first municipalities to implement a paper and cardboard program, which results in over 3,000 tons of paper being reused and the township being able to offset program costs through the sale of yard waste. Other public works accomplishments include being one of the first communities in Delaware Valley to replace all incandescent traffic signals with LEDs. This resulted in a 90% reduction in energy costs and reduced staff maintenance time as LED lights last far longer. Prior to the installation, we predicted that it would take 5 years for the LEDs to pay for themselves. However, the payback time for this investment was only 3 years. Between 2000 and 2002, the township replaced all of its incandescent traffic and pedestrian signals with LEDs. The new signals reduced the township's annual traffic signal energy expenditure from over $130,000 to only $10,000. Additionally, the LEDs lower energy use, save 934 megawatts of power, and reduce the township's GHG emissions by 495 tons per year. In the beginning of the 2020s, the township completed the upgrade of all our 5,000 streetlights to LEDs. We also have been updating our township facilities for LED lights as renovations are made, including administration building, Crestmont Park, Abington Free Library, and wastewater treatment plant. Public Works leaf collection program brought in 30,000 cubic yards of leaves to be processed, through the year. Township not only collects the yard waste, but we recycle it by turning it into mulch. At our public works facility, we compost both leaf and yard waste material year-round to create 2 types of mulch for residents to use and to sell to contractors. We then make the mulch available each spring for residents at Avathorpe, Betawood, and Crestmont Park. Public Works Department has also conducted a public education campaign, which I'm sure many of you have seen on the side of our trash vehicles. All of these efforts have contributed to a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions as we have reduced the amount of waste we are sending for disposal. Recycling items that would typically be sent to the landfill and have fewer trucks on the street for both collection and transport to the dumps, contributing to vehicle miles traveled. Although these actions can often go overlooked, transportation is one of the largest generators of emissions here at the township, and these programs have been a significant step in reducing the township's contribution. I would like now to transition from Public Works to Parks and Recreation, which I now oversee. Abington Township has over 27 parks. These open spaces and their subsequent walking paths and trails within the parks and surrounding neighborhoods promote walking and bicycling and help reduce the miles that vehicles travel and subsequently reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve air quality, reduce traffic congestion, and improve safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. The township has undertaken several plans in recent years to evaluate our walkability, bikeability, and access to multimodal transportation. In 2016, the township completed a master bike plan and a walk park train plan in 2017. Since the plan's completion, the township has sought grants to begin implementing some of the recommendations. Currently, the township is implementing a recommendation from both plans by creating a trail connection to Crestmont and Ardsley SEPTA stations that will provide important connections to 6 community parks along the route. Additionally, the township acquired $715,000 transportation alternatives set aside grant to establish a mixed-use trail along Washington Lane, Greenwood Avenue, and Jenkintown Road, and provide a connection into Avathorpe Park and provide an important connection to downtown Jenkintown. Connections like these result in lower greenhouse emissions, promotes the physical activity, a more vibrant, healthy, and sustainable community. Other improvement projects underway include increasing accessibility at Briarbush Nature Center, Grove Park, and Rochester Park. Many of these projects include other benefits such as stormwater management and stream bank and land restoration. Furthermore, working with the Shade Tree Commission, Abington has received more than $256,000 in state and private grants for tree planting, community forest management, and habitat restoration since 2013. We have been ongoing restoration projects at Ardsley Wildlife, Betawood Park, and the Boy Scout Preserve. Despite COVID, 219 trees were planted in the township in 2020. Additionally, Abington received Tree City USA certification for the 14th year running. Overall, the work undertaken by Public Works and Parks and Recreation with the assistance of many other departments and township staff and township boards and committees has enabled the township to not only provide quality services to residents, but to reduce carbon footprint. We look forward to new recommendations of the local climate action plan and seeing other ways to improve our efficiency and services. And with that, I would like to introduce Tom McEhaney, our Director of Fire and Emergency Management Services. Thank you.
Thanks, Ange. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom McEnany. As Ange just said, I'm the Director of Fire and Emergency Management Services here in Abington. And part of that is I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator. I've been the Emergency Management Coordinator for Abington since 2013. And as part of that position, I help various agencies within the township and partner agencies outside of the township to develop and oversee various emergency response plans, hazard mitigation plans, and this includes the county-wide hazard mitigation plan. The last update was in 2017. They're required to update that every 5 years, and that was the most recent one, which I was a part of the planning team. And that plan lists areas across the county, area by area, including Abington, the various places that have historically had certain hazards and what type of hazards they are, and what they're looking at for the future for planning purposes. For Abington, it's not going to be any surprise. A lot of the high risk, high threat things are the flooding, the winter storms, and the disruption of utilities, transportation, basic services that come along with those types of incidents. And then some of the moderate risks, but moderate in that they may not happen as often, but when they do, they create high impact, or your hurricanes, tropical storms, and nor'easters. And when they say they're moderate because they don't happen as often, it seems like they are happening more and more. Here in Abington, I was just reviewing some of the storms that we've had in the last 10 years. We've had 5 presidential declared disaster declarations due to storms in the last 10 years here in Montgomery County, Abington in particular. Just for those storms, the cleanup, and just went through all the great work Public Works does, because quite frankly, they take the brunt of all of the cleanup in these storms, and they do a phenomenal job. Just the cleanup for the presidentially declared declarations is in excess of 1.6 million over the last 10 years. We're going all the way back to Tropical Storm Irene and Lee back in 2011, 2012, Superstorm Sandy. Those were before my time on the job as the emergency management coordinator. We seem to average one of these critical, extreme weather type events on average every 18 months to 2 years, it seems anymore. 2014, we had the ice storm that hit in February of 2014. And during that storm, 21,000 out of 23,000 homes in Abington Township lost power, some for close to 2 weeks. The critical infrastructure went without power. The township building and police station, all 5 fire stations, Abington Hospital, every school building in the township, both public and parochial and private schools, Penn State, all 11 wastewater pumping stations ended up on generator, 30 traffic signals. And it took a little over a week to get all of the roads open. Public Works gets all the roads open that they can almost immediately that aren't involved in wires and electrical issues. But when these storms roll through and there's wires involved, they have to wait for PECO to come and secure power. Moving on, 2016, Winter Storm Jonas. We had 2 feet of snow fall over a 3-day period. It was the 4th largest snowstorm in Pennsylvania, or at least Abington history, or Southeast Pennsylvania history. And, again, it took a ton of man hours to clean that up. March of 2018, another ice storm. 11,000 people in the township lose power, or homes, not people, lost power, some for close to a week, and it took almost 4 days to get the roads cleared. And then just last June, severe thunderstorm rolls through. I think it was like a Tuesday afternoon, June 3rd. 8,000 people lost their power, 91 separate outages, 240 separate incidences of trees and wires and road closures. So we see this on an every other year type of basis. And I grew up in this township. I've lived here pretty much my entire life. And what we've seen just over the last 10 years has been more than we've seen in almost my entire time living here. So climate change concerns are not just isolated to Abington and the neighboring communities as much as we feel like it does sometimes. The state has tried to quantify the impacts of climate change so that they can plan for it. One of the documents they've produced is the 2020 Pennsylvania Climate Impacts Assessment. which documents that in Pennsylvania, the average temperature has climbed nearly 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1901, and the state average rainfall has increased 10%, and extreme weather events have increased, as I just kind of talked about, just in Abington alone over the last 10 years. The average rainfall is going to continue to increase 8 to 12% is what they're estimating, unless greenhouse gas emissions are reduced. In 2015, the Philadelphia put together a paper, Growing Stronger Toward a Climate-Ready Philadelphia Climate Adaptation Plan, and it depicts the historical climate change since 2010 for the region, including the warmest summers, the wettest years on record, an increase in hurricanes, and in 2012, we had a I can never pronounce that right, derecho, come close by, which is essentially a straight lined windstorm that brings similar impacts to tornadoes across a wider swath. This plan projects that by the end of the century, 4 to 10 times as many days per year will be 95 degrees or higher, and as many as 16 days per year will be above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This will create health-related problems such as asthma, cardiovascular disease, COPD, and other respiratory issues due to the higher levels of ozone, as well as the adverse effects on regional transit, watershed, stormwater, and wastewater management. Other moderate perceived threats include, as I mentioned, the extreme temperature ranging from a few days of extreme cold during the winter months to extreme warm and humid weather during the summer months. And then when you mix that in with the power outages that come from these extreme storms, it makes it very hard, ranges from uncomfortable to, some of our folks that are without power for longer and longer amounts of time, where they need life-saving equipment, whether it's their oxygen generator or, things to cool their house. It becomes a much more pervasive problem. Tornadoes and severe winds causing property damage, traffic issues due to traffic lights, loss of power, utility disruption, and things like that. These risks have been increasing, and their impacts can be felt mostly by our most vulnerable community members. These weather events and changes can have serious implications for our community. In my role, I have to continue to evaluate and reevaluate how we confront these challenges. Initiatives like this, the development of a climate action plan, help to identify not only the challenges we face, but how we can work collaboratively to address some of the factors causing these changes. With all of that said, I'd like to now introduce Dr. John Sorrentino. He's a professor of economics and sustainability from Temple University and is a member of the EAC. He is going to provide some background on climate change and the projected impacts here in Abington. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. It seems that the people here tonight are pretty aware of the issues that I'm going to speak of, and Tom covered a bunch of the issues as well. So most people among us know the difference between climate and weather, though previous presidents may not have been so clear on that issue. Now, many of us are familiar with the bell curve or the normal distribution, and this one is essentially weather occurrences, and the average is the most likely thing to happen. So if the bell curve shifts to the right, that means the extreme in the heat direction is more likely than previously. So we can suffer some extreme heat that we didn't before. Next, thank you. So this is a diagram of weather anomalies, which means deviations from the trend. And here the trend is a 20th century average. In the old days, anomalies happened pretty much below the mean, but from then on, from let's say the 1950s and 60s, things started in the upward trend. Okay, thank you. This is similar, and regardless of whether we use the pink or the blue, we see an upward trend. And if we go to the extreme right, very cold nights are on the downswing and very warm nights are on the upswing. The blue diagram emphasizes some of the things that Tom mentioned. And if you notice, the darkest blue is the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. So that's increase in heavy precipitation. Now, the other side of the diagram says, let's see, prospective, it's very hard to read, prospective number of heavy precipitation events. So you notice that 0 is the line that things bounce off of. And if you go to the extreme right, they're all above, meaning more occurrences. The same thing occurs here in annual precipitation. We take that straight line to be the average. And then the other side is extreme events, which is roughly 0.7. So if you look in the extreme right of both of these diagrams, they're above the average. Taking the emissions over time, we see that squiggly orange line, but the future is important in terms of what we're going to suffer. So the green has, say, lower damage associated with it, and the red is where the scary part happens. We're looking at temperature change, and that was degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, yeah, thank you. So this is a busy slide, but some of the things that Tom mentioned are here. The PA is going to be 3 degrees Celsius warmer by 2050. Philadelphia is going to be Richmond, and we'll have more 90-degree days, more precipitation in the winter and spring. Snow will be a memory, and storms will be stronger. Okay, Ashley, thank you. Next, yeah. So what's driving this? Among the other greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide is one of the major causes of things. And if you notice, well, please go back. If you notice the top diagram, it's CO2 in parts per million or milligrams per liter. And if you spread out the x-axis or the horizontal axis, this looks pretty linear. But if we squeeze the axis a little harder, it would look kind of exponential. And the bottom one goes over hundreds of thousands of years. And you see up and down, up and down, up and down until the extreme right, we see that tremendous increase. Now that increase made Al Gore relatively famous in An Inconvenient Truth. He said, this is pretty scary. Now, if we're looking at this, we see a feedback loop. So global temperatures go up, precipitation and evaporation go up, temperatures go up, evaporation, precipitation. So we're in a cycle that we want to avoid. If the Department of Defense is scared, then we should be too. Getting to the money side of things, 2020 had this bunch of billion-dollar incidences. Wildfires, strong storms, and Tom mentioned some of them that affected Abington and the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. We can't endure those damages day after day. Tom also mentioned this study and our derecho, the local area derecho. So health problems are associated with the increasing temperature. Back one, please. Good, thanks. So NBC 10 is saying this is not a hoax. This is serious, and we can show you examples of it. Thank you, Ashley. Even the investment companies are looking at climate change. So BlackRock, which is a local favorite, is saying we're not going to fund coal anymore, and we're going to talk our folks out of other fossil fuels. Same thing with JP Morgan on the next slide. They're saying, let's get our clients to go along with the Paris Agreement. That's relatively unheard of. And perhaps the irony of all in this slide set is the coal mining museum is going to solar. Who'd have thunk? The banks are saying we're not going to fund drilling in the Arctic. Right on. Now, I added 2 slides to generalize a bit. So climate models are very complicated, especially when we try to estimate damages decades into the future. So if you notice, the vertical axis is percent of global GDP. This gets rid of all currency problems, et cetera, for the world as a whole. Based on the assumptions and how we treat the future relative to the present, we come up with different models. So the scariest one is the gray one. The relatively famous one is the DICE model, and the other is relatively tame. So the avoidance of these damages is what we consider the benefits of climate mitigation. We don't know what scenario is going to unfold, but we're happy that we can deal with it. And, oh, thank you. Please go ahead. Now, dealing with it is feasible, doable, and actually beneficial. So starting in extreme left, we have efficiency kinds of things, some of which Angelo and Tom mentioned, that save money, save emissions, and make us better off even if the climate is a hoax. But if we want to get more serious about that, meaning try to find ways to reach the Paris Agreement limits, then we can get into more sophisticated efficiency in buildings, go to renewable fuels, and then ultimately to things like carbon capture. And that's all I have. And I'm sorry I don't know the next speaker, so I can't introduce that person. That's
It's me.
that good, okay? Well,
Good
here's
evening,
Kathy.
everyone. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Khaki Evans, and just as there's nothing more important than our health, and just as society mobilized to combat cancer, now is certainly, next slide, please, the time to mobilize to with climate change. So why has climate change become such a national priority? If you look at the impacts, next slide, please. There's more flooding, all these different sectors, and there's 4 sectors I'm going to talk about, but really this is happening. And we're talking about heat, air pollution, insect carrying diseases, and access to care. So first, I'm going to talk about heat, and medical professionals are really taking this seriously. In Vermont, there's a group that's saying that carbon pollution is poised to be the dominant human health threat of the 20th century. Next slide, please. So that's fine. So with heat, we know that the 10 hottest years, we're getting hotter. And what does this mean? And these are some of the health effects of heat, all these terrible health effects. Next slide, please. And so with air pollution, particulate matter is very important because from burning fossil fuels, you have these very fine particles that really affect our health. Next slide, please. And these are the possible health effects of particulate matter. All these different illnesses, respiratory illnesses. Next slide. So in Montgomery County, green is good, but these are our ozone days. Yellow is not so great, and red means that you're at risk, you cannot go out. So it looks like our air, has been getting better, and that's great. But with climate change, that may not continue to be the case. Next slide, please. And these are the adult health behaviors. Next slide, please. And so the air pollution is listed as the 4th highest ranking global mortality risk factor. And these are the particulate matter deaths currently or what happened in 2015 and what's going on throughout the world. And I want to talk about not indoor air quality, as we say in the green building environment, but really indoor air pollution. And using gas is not good. So methane, as you're going to learn later tonight when we go into our greenhouse gas inventory, is certainly a problem. It has quite a bit, much greater global warming potential than what we call carbon, what's carbon dioxide. And we spend so much of our time indoors, but homes with gas stoves have quite a bit higher emissions of these bad emissions than homes with electric stoves. So the next time you get a gas dryer, think about electricity. That's fine. And the amount of pollution from, just think about our buildings and the amount of methane gas. So there's so many terrible costs of these, of these health risks. And buildings are the #1 source of pollution-related premature deaths. I know some of this is shocking to you, but facts don't lie. And this is a picture of, you can research facilities in Abington if you want to know if there's any violations. So I can show you how to do that. And again, from fuel in buildings, 10% of our US carbon emissions are generated that way. And so, as I said before, methane is really a very bad greenhouse gas emitter. And it has here, 84 times the global warming impact as carbon dioxide. So let's talk about diseases. We will have more nasty bugs. In fact, we already have more nasty bugs. And according to the CDC, illnesses from the insect vectors have tripled in the United States from 2004 to 2016. Just think about that. And malaria, who would have thought that malaria, but there are 1,500 cases, and malaria is expected, or it has, it's 5 times higher, that's fine, than in 1990. And Lyme disease, we're right in the corridor, so we really have to worry about this. And, with just a 2%, and we've now learned that actually we want to keep it down to 1.5% Celsius, but with 2%, it's expected to increase by 20%. And look at the mosquito days. It used to be 109 days, and now it's 131 days. That is not good. And let's talk about access to care. So why talk about COVID-19 and the climate change? Because really, climate change is the big elephant in the room. If you think, and as horrible as COVID was, think about the droughts and the people having to migrate for losing their homes. I mean, this is what we're facing if we don't do something. And ask our next speaker, Pastor Marshall Mitchell. He knows all about COVID. So the access to care issue, the one thing, many things, but it shows that access to care with all these emergencies, it really showed all these problems. Next slide, please. So what about access to care? Not when Hurricane Katrina hit, not when Hurricane Maria hit, not when Mississippi's historic flood hit, and certainly not with Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. And what we do know is that communities of color are the hardest hit by climate disasters. And so now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Pastor Marshall Mitchell, who's going to be talking about this and really knows firsthand how communities are impacted. Thank you.
Khaki, thank you very much. And good evening, everybody. And good to see this community rally around this very important issue on Earth Day. In the other part of my life, Khaki, I work in Hollywood on films. And so years ago, Disney hired me to create the marketing plan for its Earth Day film releases. So this is like a return to the beginning for me. And I'm proud of what Salem Baptist Church does and represents in this space. As you know, we're still relatively new to Abington Township and new to Roslyn. But even as we were purchasing that facility, we looked at ways that we could positively impact climate change and positively impact the conditions in the community. One of the obvious things that we encountered in moving to Roslyn was the history of almost biblical floods in the area where we bought the church. And so we've already been very engaged in stormwater management. It's in our DNA. We've looked at renewable energy. We've looked at how we can lighten our carbon footprint. And that's something that we will do across the range of populations that we represent. We have a very active youth group at Salem from the age of 0 to 18. We are at about 160 kids. And then when you go north and look at the group that's 65 and older, that's another large part of our population. So we've got about 2,000 people who are committed to playing a positive role with respect to preserving our earth. We believe in it religiously. Many people will know the term creation care. People in the religious community have not always been as full-throated as we should be with respect to these issues. But we fundamentally believe that in Genesis, God created the world. So if he created it, he left us responsible for it. And so the Bible says that we should dress and keep it. And so fundamentally, we believe that being part of this climate action plan for Abington means that we need to play our part as a large institution, as a community of faith, and additionally as a community of color to make sure that there is equity and full participation. And so we've already started doing that. One of the things that has occurred to me is most African Americans grew up 50, 60, 70 years ago, and they were in the South. very connected to the earth. And that has not been lost on us as a community. So Abington can always expect that Salem is going to play a significant role by way of its size, by way of its moral leadership and its influence in the community. And we will continue to push. We'll play a leadership role, and we will do the things that Manager Manfredi and others have already thought about. We've changed all of our lighting. We've made our energy systems more efficient. We have done a tremendous amount of stormwater management, which benefits our neighbors because much of the water that used to roll right off of Salem into the community is actually preserved in cisterns in the ground. And so we're doing what we can, and we will continue to do that to make sure that there's access, that there's equity, and that we demonstrate our care. So we're in full tilt, and you don't have to worry about us disappearing. We've been around for 137 years, so we're not Janie or Johnny come lately. We're in for the long haul in our new home and for our community so that we can provide a leadership role. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for walking the talk. That's just great to hear. So I encourage everybody to help us. This is good trouble and necessary trouble. And now I want to talk about what is the role of our municipality in making climate mitigation, and what's the role of all of us in climate change decision-making. And why are cities so important? Why does it focus around cities? So do you know that 1 in 4 Americans right now live in a community that's committed to an energy transition, clean energy? And as you heard earlier, we talked about Abington's Ready for 100 resolution. And that was led by the Sierra Club. And that's leading and joining other municipalities that are ready for 100. And in Montgomery County, these are the communities, and some of the yellows are actually greens now, but these are, you'll see Abington there as well as the others. So now what? You pass a resolution, what you going to do? And there are 3 options for us. You could either contract with a consultant, you can apply for a Department of Environmental Protection Climate Action Plan. We've done that, and our intention is to complete this year. And also you could do it yourself, and we're doing that as well, because with Ready for 100, we have a team of very wonderful individuals who are being trained to develop a community clean energy plan, or ACEPT, A-C-E-P-T. We want everyone to accept this, and I'm going to go into that very briefly. So in Pennsylvania, the orange are communities that already have a climate action plan. The big dots are counties, and the greens are resolutions. And so we're one of the green dots, and we really aspire to be a little orange dot. Thank you. And there are 3 things you have to do. One is you have to make the commitment. We've done that. You have to make a plan, and we're doing that. And then you have to act, because what good is a plan if it just sits on a shelf? And this is what our template looks like, through the what we call the LCAP program, the Local Climate Action Program. There were 20 communities in last year, and this year there's 21, and we're being given great technical assistance. We have a wonderful, you're about to meet college student from Drexel University. They've trained it. It's very technical work. And the goal is now there are 41 communities have been in this program. And through the Ready for 100 program, these are all the communities, over 30 actually. And that's, again, our ACEPT team. And we're looking at the energy aspects, because a climate action plan is actually bigger than just an energy management plan. So we can fold it in. And this is the energy management piece of it. And the process, this is, we're following with the Ready for 100 training, the guidebook put out by the US Department of Energy. And the training that we're getting, very, very detailed training, is in these 4 areas: energy procurement, electric vehicle options, energy management and efficiency, and renewable energy production. And the local climate action plan, these are the roles. We've done milestone 1, we've developed our inventory. We're in the process now with you of establishing reduction targets. And now we're also working on the climate action plan. The next step is actually to implement the policies and the specific energy conservation and land saving, green technologies. and as well as we have to monitor and verify the results. So it's a continuous cycle. And I wanted to tell you that some plans just deal with mitigation, climate action plans, and we're going to go for both mitigation and adaptation. And there's a difference. Mitigation is basically what you're doing to prevent or bring down your greenhouse gas emissions. And adaptation recognizes that you have to adapt to it. So the middle part are the technologies that, you know, are both. But really, what's nice about a climate action plan is you're not just dealing with energy management, but you're really looking at green infrastructure and the whole piece of it. So is a really great advantage of having a climate action plan. And this is our time frame. We've already accomplished what's in the green, and some of these red bars we are about to accomplish, but you can see where the second red bar is about having our climate action plan collaborative. So welcome, you're a part of it now. And we've had our first workshop tonight, and we expect to have our next one next month, and you'll hear about this. And we hope to be able to finalize and adopt our climate action plan to our Board of Commissioners by this fall. And these are the 4 steps for a climate action plan. This is the first phase that you're about to hear about, develop the emissions profile. The next are once you have the profile, what are you going to do with it? So you have to identify the sectors and the high emitters. And then the third phase is developing the greenhouse gas reduction strategies. And then the fourth phase is working with the community to have some voluntary program options. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce Akila Chapman, our wonderful Drexel student who's been working with us. Take it away, Akila.
Hi, everyone. I want to talk to you a bit about the process that we went through to get all the data collection to calculate the greenhouse gas inventory. So how we had to do that, there are 4 main steps. So scoping, data collection, reporting, and calculating emissions. So in scoping, we had to think about things such as like, where is this power originating from? Like, where is the waste being like taken and all that kind of stuff to give a more accurate calculation. And then data collection, we reached out to a bunch of different facilities to get Abington specific data. And then we used ClearPath to calculate them. And yeah. So for data collection, we were looking at Aqua for water treatment, SEPTA for public transportation. We worked with the DVRPC, Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, that's a mouthful. And they got us information from PICO for electricity, natural gas, and mobile transportation data in general. We also reached out to Abington Township for the public works for waste data, as well as the wastewater treatment plant, and then the Philadelphia Water Department in the Northeast facility. So in getting this data from them and like bring it into ClearPath, some of the things that we had to consider were the emissions factors and the global warming potentials, which are explained a bit here. And so the different sectors that we had were industrial and commercial, residential, transportation and mobile sources, solid waste, water and wastewater, processes and fugitive emissions, and then also agriculture, forestry, and other land use. But there was very minimal of that in Abington. We can see here that we have three sectors give off the most emissions, and that is residential, industrial, and commercial, as well as transportation and mobile sources, and they total to 91% of Abington's community greenhouse gas. There have been 4 different inventories taking place. So they are happening roughly every 3 to 5 years. So the 2018 one that I helped calculate came in right in between there. And there, one thing to note is that all of these have been calculated in different ways depending on who is doing that. And so with the ICLEI training, they had a way of calculating that was slightly different than DVRPC, who did it in 2015. So here we have a breakdown of those 2 most recent greenhouse gas emissions, and we wanted to highlight how things have either gotten better or gotten slightly worse. So residential, which is the largest emitter, we can see that in natural gas, Abington has been using a lot more natural gas, and that in turn has the entire total of the energy and the global and the greenhouse gas potential is increasing. So we have for electricity, it went down by 9%, but natural gas up by 8%, and overall everything went up by 0.5%. And then commercial and industrial energy, overall this has been good and has been getting better. The electricity went down by 1%, natural gas by 10%, and overall 4% went down. Lastly, mobile sources for highway transit. So that's like us driving on our cars, buses, and things like that. That increased by 1%. But then rail transit, so like most of the public transportation, that went down by 13%, which is absolutely amazing.
So Akila, before you go, let me ask you something. When you see that the residential natural gas usage went up, what does that tell you? You think that electrification would be a good strategy instead of people relying on natural gas?
Oh, absolutely. We know that Abington and a lot of other communities are doing a lot of things to get cleaner electricity. And so that's a great step and something that with the township's help, a lot of people could do better without too much worry on themselves. So that's what's really great about this plan. It's the community and the government working together.
Right. And you know the numbers better than anybody. So I like to
Spent a lot of
say
time.
you live by the numbers and you die by the numbers. Well, thank you very much. You've been doing great, marvelous work.
Absolutely.
Keep on shining. So let's talk about what is a climate action plan. So basically it's a comprehensive roadmap to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And as I said before, to increase our resilience and adapt to climate change. And it has a triple bottom line benefit: our social, our environmental, and our economics. And it's a roadmap, and we will have principles, a baseline, targets and goals, actions and strategies, an approach, like who is going to be part of the implementation. And also, as I said earlier, about reporting accountability, so we'll know if we're truly making progress. And as the inventory, what we just saw, it's the baseline for our goals. How do we know we're doing better? We just saw some examples of how we're not doing better. And, you know, you live by the numbers and you die by the numbers, and you have to manage. You cannot measure what you don't manage. And these strategies, these are the sectors by emissions. So, you know, you're familiar with these sectors, and the blue is basically, you know, to protect our community and our resiliency. And this is an example of an action that, you know, the roadmap is going to have a lot of examples. But for instance, if we want to focus on electricity sourcing, this is just one example that, you know, if we wanted to go to 100% renewable electricity, one action would be, you know, reducing rooftop solar costs, because there's a program called Soul Smart, and it's a very good program in order to reduce your costs, to make it easier for townships to actually expedite the permitting and all that. It has the benefits of jobs, and as I said earlier, it does streamline permitting. And so again, this is our CAP schedule, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Sue.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. I am, as Kaki introduced me, Andrea Sue. I'm also an EAC member with Kaki and John. We can go to the next slide. This is a very comprehensive timeline. So this is kind of a more pared down version of the climate action plan schedule. What we're planning to do is hold 2 additional public meetings just to help sort of refine our targets and our goals, as well as our strategies. So by the 3rd meeting, we hope to have a draft in place, and we'll gather additional feedback from the public as well as stakeholders. And then by fall, as Kaki had mentioned, by the end of September, we're hoping to have a final plan in place, which will hopefully be adopted by the Board of Commissioners. So one of the tools that we're hoping to develop, hopefully in May, to help facilitate community engagement is an online mapping tool. So this illustration that you see here is just an example. This is actually the city of Bethlehem had developed this for their climate action plan, which is an awesome tool. This is an app that was developed by a company called Community Remarks. We won't be using this specific tool, I should point out, but we will be developing a similar tool, hopefully through GIS, which is a Geographic Information Systems tool, to basically help engage the community, which will, this is sort of like a nice summary of what, how it works. So basically you would have a web link, and anybody in the public or anybody who wants to engage can basically add a pin to a particular geographic location, and then add, like, just basically conveniently post your ideas or comments and any remarks and relate it to a particular location as well as a particular hazard. So if we have, you know, if you know in your particular neighborhood you have a repeated flooding issue at, you know, the corner of 2 streets, You would just put a push pin in that location. You would either add your name, or if you want to be anonymous, you can remain anonymous and you just add your comments, and then choose from a drop down of what particular community hazard it is. So flooding, heat exposure, lack of shade, any kind of hazard you can think of that would relate to our climate action plan. Any input from any resident in the community is helpful to us because we don't have all eyes on every area of our community. So having people provide input for their particular neighborhood that they're most familiar with is extremely helpful to us. And what's great about this type of application is that you don't need to create a login. You don't have to log in. You don't have to create an account. You can just add your information, and you can add as much information as you like. So in the next slide, so basically how to stay engaged. So we've kind of pared down, what some of the summary of our points is. If you ever have a question about what's going on with the climate action plan, you can always visit our abingtonpa.gov/climate plan webpage. We'll always keep updates there. If we have any public meetings, we will post that information and how to connect with those meetings. And of course, we always ask for anyone. I mean, the fact that you are all here participating in this meeting is a wonderful endorsement for us, and you're already volunteering to just give us your input. And also, if you can share this information with your friends and your neighbors to let people know what we're doing, it's extremely helpful to us. So in the next few slides, we'll have some polling questions. So we're using an app now. Khaki, you can help me identify. So is that in working order? Do we have?
We're not using Mentimeter. We're maybe Ashley, you want to explain the polling process?
Okay.
Oh, here it is. Here's the poll. Okay.
That's really nice. Okay, this is even better. So Ashley has put up, you'll see a pop-up, another dialogue right in front of you. Basically, I'll just read off the question in case anybody is not able to read it or doesn't have the visual. So our first polling question is, which of the following goals do you think should guide the development and prioritization of the climate action plan strategies? And there's a number of choices. I'll just read them off. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve resilience, improve equitable outcomes, promote jobs and economic opportunities, reduce local air pollution, create immediate impacts, upfront cost-effective and affordable items, and long-term investment and benefits. So go ahead and answer the question. It's multiple choices, so you can add as many. Let's see. Okay, I cannot add anything as a panelist. You can go ahead and answer that, and we'll see what our responses are once everyone has participated. If anyone is not able to see this pop-up window, you can chat and let us know.
We should have piped in the Jeopardy song. Da-da.
So I don't know, Ashley, can you see people adding their responses?
So I think we have most, we are at 74%, but it doesn't seem to be rising. So I think we can head to the next question if you're all right with that.
Okay, and you'll post the results at the very end?
Yep.
Okay, all right. All right, so next question. All right, so the next question is, would you be willing to switch to renewable electricity if you knew you would save money? So right now rates are as low as 5.29 per kilowatt hour compared to PECO's rate of 6.6 or $6.60. So you can go ahead and answer that question.
And for those of you who are already using renewable electricity, kudos. Happy Earth Day.
All right, I guess we'll move on to the next question as people answer that one. All right, third polling question. Would you be interested in helping to create a community solar program to save homeowners and businesses on the costs of using solar through community aggregation? So it's reduced costs through vetted contractors. All right. And I think that was the last question. Is that right, Kathy?
Mhm.
All right. All right. I guess we'll, Kathy, you want to take it from here or?
Q&A. So now's the time for, let's see what we got.
Okay.
Why don't you do the poll results?
Okay. So this is the, okay. So for this, I don't think this is the first question, but yes. So it looks like most people answered yes for helping to create a community solar program to save homeowners and businesses costs. That's seems like a pretty logical response. Let's see what the other responses were. Okay, so this one's a little bit more of a comprehensive question. So it looks like reducing greenhouse gas emissions was a pretty high percentage. I would say the next second most voted on was create immediate impacts, like show building owners and residents how to save on their energy costs. And then I would say the third would probably be reducing local air pollution. And you can see what the other responses are. And then finally, so switching to renewable electricity, if you knew it would save you money, the vast majority of people answered yes, which again, I think is a pretty expected answer. So well, thank you everyone for participating in that poll. All right, at this stage, I think we're ready for Q&A, right, Kathy?
Mhm.
All right, so for Q&A, are we going to be using the chat feature?
We can use the chat feature, or any attendee on the line who'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand, or if you're calling in, you can press *9 on your phone. So with that, I don't see any questions that require answering at this time, but we will allow the first resident in. 1 second.
How we do tonight, y'all? That's what I want to know.
So Jean, I am seeing, I'm going to,
Kaki, I thought we did great, just so you know. I thought you did great.
Oh, I thought
You
we
all did great.
y'all.
Jean, you should now be able to unmute your microphone. It's saying,
Fine. Can you hear me?
yes.
Well, I remember back in the 1980s, we were speaking about global cooling and winter and particulate matter in the air. And then when that failed to gain any traction, we spoke about global warming. And that didn't gain a lot of traction. And now we talk about climate change, and climate does change. But I want scientific evidence, and the scientific evidence that I have seen is that it is not necessarily what we do, but it is according to, it goes, climate changes with solar activity, solar storms, and I don't think that's been addressed. And that's one question, why hasn't it been addressed? And number two, what does this all have to do with equity? I kind of find that to be an offensive term, because it should be equality. I don't want to hear about victims. So perhaps somebody could address both of those factors, both of those questions I have. Hello?
Sure. Anybody want to do it, or should I? So if the information provided to you tonight did not convince you with the increase in temperatures and with climate change, the reason it went from cooling, I don't even recall, well, cooling. I mean, it is getting hotter and you have, methane leaks at the Arctic. I mean, it's a mess and it's bad. And if you want to be a skeptic, maybe I could at least get you to realize that energy efficiency part of it is something that will benefit all. If you don't want to believe in it, it's your pocketbook, but this is happening. And as John had said earlier, if you wait on it, it's irreversible. And that's what we don't want to take that risk, because there are already people going without water. There are already islands such as Tuvalu that are disappearing. And, I understand what you're saying about solar and all that, but this is happening and it's been happening. And if the Department of, if the Armed Forces of the United States see this as really interfering with our national security, we better take it seriously. In terms of equity, yes, there is a difference between equity and equality. And so let me give you some examples of equity. So by equity, 100 years ago, home ownership by Caucasians was about 43%. And African Americans is about 40%. And 100 years later today, in Caucasians, it's about 73%. And African Americans, it's about, or 71%. And African Americans is about 43%. And that's a very disturbing statistic to me. And it hasn't always been that low. But what happens is when the economy takes a downturn, it always affects African Americans and other minority populations that don't have, equality or equity. And what does this have to do? So if I can lower my fuel bills by having solar, but yet I'm not a homeowner, or I'm paying more than 40% of my income because I'm a renter, that's a real equity issue. Do you understand what I'm saying? I won't be able to have access to these green technologies. Anybody else want to answer that? I mean, there's so many other things. I mean, we talked about access to care and the health. I'm not even going to touch on the health aspect, but, I hope I gave you an example to make you understand why it is an equity.
Okay, so our next speaker is Miss Laura Lehman. I am going to unmute your microphone.
Well, you did give a good presentation. My concern is that we're on our third or fourth star communities and LEED and so on. And each time we spend a great deal of resources gathering inventory of what we have and meeting their measures by making a list of what we already have. I believe that we are ignoring things that are already done. And I have more research to do on this issue here, but we are about to urbanize Willow Grove. And, there's very few of us that don't understand that, cities are heat centers and pollution centers. The air can't clean itself. There's not enough green space. And so we are in one room presenting climate change and talking about, density as opposed to being all spread out. But density also has its huge effects on climate change. And the fact that the major events, the major storm events, are devastating in cities where, the difference between fixing up a trailer park, for instance, versus fixing up a high rise, would just give you a visual as to the difference. Once you build a city and then you have a devastating effect, the damage that you're creating is monumental. So cities do not have all of this resilience that they've been given by the movement that wanted to rack them, stack them, and tax them, so to speak. There's been all these crazy theories, the Agenda 21 and all of that. And, there's a certain amount of truth in some of those theories, and there's a certain amount of bunk in them too. But the issue is that, for the most part, they wanted the train centers, and we see that now, the train centers to be built densely. but train transportation may well change. And this pandemic showed us why that may change. People can't share trains, when there's viruses and diseases and so on. So even an Uber model had its drawbacks, but was safer than taking a train. So we're building, giant dense things that have climate impact problems that we haven't fully studied, and we're not looking at long-term resilience. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that in one room, we're urbanizing Willow Grove, and in the other room, we're talking about climate change, that far more trees and far more green space would serve us much better. Thank you.
Okay, I
Thank
am
you.
going to unmute the microphone of Laura Murillo. You'll just have to unmute your device.
Also want to say that Trish Gallagher from the Shade Tree Commission is with us, and thank you very much, Trish.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to just say one thing about the previous gentleman's question for equity, just because, I think it was left out that often people, minorities, are living in communities close to factories, things that really greatly affect their health. And I think that's really important to bring up and talk about when you talk about equity. And I'm not even sure if our area specifically has any, spots that are dangerous, but it's something else to consider, that it is more likely that they're living close to, industrialized centers. So my question tonight is really about green contractors in our area, because, I moved here probably about 9 years ago. We haven't really been able to afford very much on our home, but we're finally, with like all the recent stimulus checks, we're finally looking into improving our home and a roof, and solar panels are actually one thing that I really want to get behind. But a lot of the contractors we've had, they're not really giving us many green options. It's just like, this is what we work with. And I have no idea, if they're really environmentally friendly. And, this is a huge investment. So that's really my main question.
I'd like to answer that because I had to put a new roof on.
Okay.
I'm surrounded by trees. I actually interviewed 29 roofers till I found the
Oh
right.
my gosh.
Yeah. I put on I used a roofer. He wasn't the last person that I interviewed, but when I interviewed him and we went on my roof and he started seeing things that nobody else did, I knew he was the right person. And he also, he was great. And he also does commercial roofs. And the advantage was he put on a white TPO roof, which is an Energy Star certified product. I would say that since I did that, I mean, not everybody can do that. It's a sloping, it's a funny roof, but I want to get back to your question, but basically I've saved easily 20% of my air conditioning since then. So this is the type of thing, I'm really glad you asked this question. I mean, you could call Green Building United, but I applaud you for wanting to use a green certified, and I think we can help you with that.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I am unmuting Miss Kathy Ackler.
Oh, no way to show a video? Here,
Oh, Miss Ackler, we can hear you.
okay, I was just trying to show my video, but anyway, so what I wanted to say was, obviously I'm an Abington resident, but I'm someone who has my master's in hydrogeology, and I've worked for an environmental firm in the past. I'm currently working at Temple University teaching a class where I teach a section on climate change, so I'm pretty well versed in this information. So what I was wondering is, does the township need volunteers from residents who, in addition to just wanting to help and improve our environment and help the township, but have a little background in environmental science as well?
Please.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I was wondering. So I'd like to take part, and it sounds like a really great start to a plan, but as you're saying, this is just the first step. So I would like to get involved more. So if you have more volunteer opportunities related to this climate change plan, I would like to hear more about how to get in touch with that.
I don't, you know what? I flubbed up because our email address is climateplan@abingtonpa.gov. So just reverse. That's our website for this plan. But if you do climateplan@abingtonpa.gov, I would love to talk to you. We need help. This is a massive undertaking.
Okay, I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I want to see that video.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, and Gene has raised his hand again. I just have to, oh, okay. Gene, your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, this is a different Gene. Than the
Oh,
person.
okay.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for this presentation. I found it very interesting. I received this invitation in the mail to join this meeting tonight. I have no idea who put me on the mail list, but whoever did, thank you. And I would hope that I am notified when the next meeting is held. I would just like to make a couple of comments. With regard to the comment about global cooling, global warming, climate change, I think if we look at what the scientists are saying globally, I believe the number is somewhere around 90% of the scientific community acknowledges that the climate is changing. Now, sometimes we get these ridiculously cold spells with massive snowstorms, but the climate is changing, and we have to recognize that and be willing to accept the fact that some of it might be a natural occurrence, but a good bit of it is being caused by our actions, and we need to be willing to take steps to change our own behavior if we want to see the planet have a long-term future. That's my opinion. I'm sure there are people that would agree with me, and I'm sure there are people that will disagree. But I trust the science, just as I trust the science in the fact that if we currently,
sorry,
that's okay. Just as if we currently do the right things, we will get to the light at the end of this tunnel regarding the pandemic. And public transportation, our behavior on public transportation may change, and masks may become a permanent part of our future. But I personally feel that public transportation will once again become safe. And if we can improve our public transportation systems, thus reduce the private means of transportation, that'll certainly help us in this battle against global warming. A couple other things I just want to comment on, if I may. I work for an engineering company. I am a construction inspector. I'm currently contracted to the Philadelphia Water Department, working in North Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Water Department, from what I understand, is 10 years into a 25-year program to improve their stormwater management by controlling the influx of stormwater that makes its way to the treatment facilities when we have these sudden rain events that go on for hours and hours and days. So I guess my point with that is that forward-looking cities, forward-looking communities are taking steps now to control the impact of these unusual events that have come, that were once unusual events that are now becoming far more commonplace. So when we talk about urbanization of communities like Willow Grove, if common sense planning becomes part of our practice, we can do better to limit the impact of a growing population. And I think that's about all I really want to say at this moment. But I personally believe in forward looking. I also believe in the science, and I am grateful for you guys putting this together. And I hope I end up on someone's mailing list and get invited to meeting number 2.
So Jean, we sent you a flyer because we noticed we had no way of getting in touch with you, but we noticed that you testified or you submitted comments to we created a list of people who submitted comments in favor of the regional greenhouse gas initiatives. I imagine you know what I'm talking about.
No, actually, I don't.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Maybe we had the wrong Gene. I don't know, but I guess we hit the jackpot because you made it.
Well, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I was surprised. I'm active. Well, I don't want to say I'm active in my community. I spend some time in the Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary, doing some trail maintenance there, picking up trash. I work with some other folks in my neighborhood to do those things. And I asked them if they had gotten any information about this meeting, and they did not. So I'm going to share my experiences with them, and I'm going to offer myself as a volunteer in any way that I can, and I suspect that they might also.
Well, that's great. We'll put you to work, and you'll put yourself to work. And please send an email to EAC@abingtonpa.gov so we can get in touch with you.
EAC at
abingtonpa.gov.
Okay.
And I just want to take a minute. You know, there's some great people. Also, you know, Tony Davis, who's the president of the Willow Grove NAACP, is here. Sister Anna Dura is here. Our state representative Ben Sanchez is here. Dr. James Melcher from the Abington School District is here. We have a wonderful person from SPS Industries. So, you know, I'm really happy that so many of our institutional or community partners, Jerome Mitchell from the Willow Grove CDC is here. You know, John Lesher from the Monco Planning Commission. We've just got great people. And, you know, I see Mike Philmeyer made it. Oh, Commissioner Thompson, thank you. And, you know, Mom's Organic Market. So, you know, I think we're all in this together. And if I've left out, I mean, I'd love to read everybody's name, but, you know, we're really happy because there's a lot of work to do. This is a big, big effort, but I think we can get there. I know we can get there. You are the right people at the right time, at the right place.
All right, so at this time, I'm going to unmute the microphone of Tony Davis.
Hey.
To unmute your device. I see you unmuted your device, but we cannot hear you. I don't think we have your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. I didn't really plan on speaking, but I remember based on what Jean just said, there was a meeting probably 8, 9, 10 years ago in Norristown regarding floodwaters coming from the suburbs towards the city. And it seems to me that a major impact of that was the building of new construction, such as Bluebell Country Club across the street from where I work. And many of those companies have purchased that land, and it seems to me that the discussion was about how they negotiated away any potential runoff problems that they should have to pay for with new construction. Therefore, the old sewer lines, it was sewer line oriented, would have to manage that water, thus creating problems for those that are maybe in less fortunate areas. And so I would think that that should probably become a part of that discussion, and maybe that's connected to what Jean was talking about, but I just wanted to bring that up. And I can't think of what that workshop was, but there were a lot of people there from all over this region.
So you're saying that with new construction, it's really important. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, but I mean, you know, I mean, there should always be proper permitting, but you're saying that people were impacted because something went wrong?
Somebody's negotiated away the liability they might have from the runoff, because when you put concrete, blacktop, etc., that creates extra runoff that may impact floodplains, et cetera.
Right, right. Should never happen. Yep. Yeah, they have issues like that in Harrisburg, and they're real environmental justice issues, but we all cannot be aware. And Tony, let me ask you this. Climate change, is that one of the premier issues of the NAACP?
Well, it might become, now that we've listened to it some more.
No, it is though.
But we have many issues on the table. Yes.
Yes, I mean, climate change is, so everybody should join the NAACP. That's my plug. I'm a proud member and we all should be too. Thank you.
We also have some chat questions. I don't want to miss.
We have one more speaker who raised their hand, if that's all right. Cynthia Darby, I've unmuted your microphone. You'll just have to unmute on your device.
Thank you very much. I just want to add, I was looking over what can an individual do to sort of change, the solar panels won't work for us because we have huge trees here, which is also helpful to air conditioning costs. But I was looking at, I think this is the decade when people can start to switch over more and more to hybrid and electric automobiles. And I just want to put a plug in for that and just say that that is one area as an individual I'm thinking about doing that would make a difference. The other thing is like just following the climate change, science over time. It's just understanding just how much more heat there is in our whole climate system, where the ocean waters are warmer than they've ever been, and that just puts so much more heat. When you throw heat into a system, you get more extreme events, more, just a lot of what we're seeing. And if anybody's struggling to understand that, I just want to put that out there. So, okay. One other issue that I think about sometimes is I'm fascinated by some of the, I watch a lot of tiny house and off-grid stuff, and there's so many inventive ways that people are looking at how to live, with a lot lower impact. The problem is, how do you bring some of the innovation into an already established area like Abington? And that's just sort of like putting that out there to think and chew about, because again, we need more rethinking of how this is how we always do things, sort of, and thinking about, well, how can we do things differently now? So that's all I'll say. Bye.
Well, I like that you think outside the box, Cynthia, and it's, there's a lot that people can do, especially for energy efficiency. I mean, in insulation, we could probably get 42% of the way of what we need to do just by, I can't have solar in my house, but I'm just telling you that there's a lot of energy efficiency and people just don't know about it. So I'm going to make it a point, I hope by next week, to post a PDF of actions that Paula Klein from Ready for 100 put together, and I've integrated a little bit more in that. And also I want to say that if there are any building operators out there, Green Building United right now is giving a great sustainable building training course. It's really for operations and maintenance personnel, but maybe we could do that on a local level. And if any of you would like to take that, there are 3 more sessions and I have the first one recorded. If any of you would like to take it, if you have a building, let me know. I might be able to get you a scholarship. I mean, they've been very generous to us, Green Building United. If you can't afford it, because I don't want, it's $50 a session, but I went to the first one. I'm going to go to the next one's May the 5th. And these are the kinds of things we have to get educated, because the biggest majority of emissions I just talked about was business, but really, it's really the residents that we have to get to. Because you could see that in Akila's presentation that businesses are making an impact. They are reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. I only wish that our residential community. And earlier tonight, it showed that, between 2005 and 2015, we went down by almost 21%. And that was really nothing that we did. It was because natural gas was more the source of our electricity, our energy generation. But don't think that natural gas, you hear clean natural gas. That's not true, because natural gas has about half the greenhouse gas emissions of coal, and coal is the worst. So, we've got, so that's why we talked a little bit tonight, and certainly I believe the community embraces it, that electrification will be a strategy. And I'm very happy that you brought up about electric vehicles. The prices are coming down, and I think that 10 years from now, I think our roads are going to be very different. Thank you.
Right, and we have one more individual who raised their hand. So D Bell, I'm going to unmute your mic to unmute your device.
Hi, thank you, Ashley. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Dave.
Great, thanks. Yeah, this has been great, and thanks to everyone for contributing. I just want to raise one other issue here, and that is after energy and transportation, perhaps the largest impact on climate change is agriculture, specifically animal and dairy. And it tends to get overlooked, but depending on how it's calculated, it might be 20% or more of the greenhouse gas emissions that can be attributed to agriculture. So people who are looking at something they can quickly do, I mean, you could starting tomorrow to reduce your impact is just look at what's in your refrigerator. And there's lots of information, lots of resources, lots of science behind this. So just want to remind people that that is a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions. And it's something that you can address instantly by looking at your diet. Thank you.
It's a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions. Red meat is actually red meat, lamb. It's, I'm ready for a meatless Monday. I'm ready to, I really need to go vegetarian because it's a huge source, Dave. And thank you very much for contributing that.
Thank you.
Dairy products. Thank you. Good point.
And that's all of our
Okay.
raised hands for today.
All right. Well, we're going to roll our little video. I guess we're ready for that. And
What about
everybody,
the chat? There's some chat questions. I don't know if the person's.
oh, there are. I don't see any.
There's one about. It had a question about an electrician advising them to order to switch from gas heating to electric. It would cost a fortune to change my system. Is it possible for homeowners to make a reasonable change without a high cost?
I would say that's why, like when people go to geothermal, for instance, it's usually going from an oil system. I have gas in my home and I'm not about to change, but when it gets, when it runs, when my heating goes, I'm thinking about, because I can't get solar, about, doing geothermal, but yeah, that's something that it's something about that's why our grid is so important, because if our grid could become cleaner sources like solar and wind, that would help a lot. So, we have a C-PACE, or a commercial PACE program for financing for businesses that we'll probably talk about at the next meeting. There isn't one in Pennsylvania. And there used to be a great program that we need to get started again, where you could actually do these types of financing for less than 1%. And so it would almost pay for itself. That would be for energy efficiency, but not for electrification. So if you send us an email and you give us the specifics, I will look into it. I will talk with my colleagues at Green Building United, and we'll see what we can do to get you some help. Thank you.
You also might Google life cycle cost.
Yeah. So says the professor of economics of sustainability. Thank you, John.
Khaki, there's another question in the chat that asks, will we be getting solar powered EV charging stations in the township with this plan?
Khaki, you're muted.
What's the question? I'm sorry, I didn't, was
Charging
it?
stations.
Yeah, will we
So
be getting charging stations?
we're looking into that. The township submitted an application just a few weeks ago, and we're looking into that possibility. You know, we're putting it together. You know, we have to make sure that but we did get a grant for part of it, but that's not all the costs. So we're looking into that. And if you want to help us with that, that's good, because we want to make an informed decision. But yes, that's definitely on the docket. We're looking into it. You asked the
Jackie?
right question. Yep.
We just received notification that our level 2 EV charging rebate application was approved. We right now we have a rebate voucher amount of $9,000. We're still exploring how we're going to be able to utilize that. So in reference to the application that we just filed, literally we just got this information. Haven't even had
Great.
the chance to review it.
Great. It's great. I think we've got like up to 6 months to use it or lose it.
180 days, I believe,
Okay.
through September 26th, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. All right. Well, we do have, part of our accept team, or Jen Sherwood wants to take the lead on charging stations and electric vehicles. So that's great to hear. And, anything that we can do to support, let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything you already do.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Are we good? Okay. Well, I see, we're dropping off on people. So, Rich, Mr. Manfredi, do you want to thank us out or say goodnight to everybody? Or
Jackie, I think
President
that
Spiegelman?
President Spiegelman and you should be the ones who thank everyone away for the evening. The work you've done, the hours that you've put in, I don't think people have any idea how many hours you've put into this. And there are so many people over the years that we tried to recognize early that have done such a tremendous job. It's a privilege to be a part of where we're trying to take this. So with that, I'll say nothing more and turn it over to you and President Spiegelman.
Well, if I may jump in, I've tried to be quiet and be a good listener tonight, but this has been wonderful. And yeah, Kaki, there is no one can say enough about everything you've contributed. I want to thank everyone who presented tonight. And I think due to rushing and stage fright, I completely neglected in my earlier thank yous to acknowledge Akila Chapman and all of your phenomenal work. So thank you so much. Your work and wisdom are far beyond your young years, to say the very least. And also just to everyone who participated, and it was great to field all of those questions. And there were several callers who made some really very I think profound contributions, and I think we're going to really be a part of this process for the future. So again, thank you everyone, and again, happy Earth Day. Stay safe and keep on keeping on.
Good night, everybody. Keep on shining. And thank you so much. I really want to thank the township has given us tremendous support on this. I cannot say enough about Ashley, and I want to thank all the panelists. And Ashley, you're the host with the most. I mean, you've just been incredible. So thank you all very, very much. Good night.
Well, good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye all.